Yes, a anthology horror film that I was not really familiar with, to be honest. I was very familiar, or relatively familiar, with the Twilight Zone, the TV show. I have seen um, pretty much like the first season, and it's really cool. I really like it a lot. It's kind of like a cool little sci-fi show. I think the coolest part about it is like, a lot of sci-fi naturally deals with like futuristic advanced technology. And, being that we're in the year 2021, I really like how you can go back and watch a sci-fi TV show from the early 60s and just see, all of the ways that they portrayed the future and like some of the really high-tech gadgets that they kind of interpolated into some of the episodes, and some of the I guess you can call them skits, or you know some iterations of the futuristic life that they thought. Rod Sterling was a very progressive, unique, talented storyteller, and the Twilight Zone is classic. I think everybody should watch that show, and I need to finish it. But of the episodes that I've seen, I enjoy a lot of them, and I think they're really cool. I would say my favorite is probably the episode in which the guys crash land in what they think is a planet, but it ends up being just like Nevada wasteland, which is pretty hilarious. And that story is pretty cool. But yeah, the movie itself, Twilight Zone from 1983, my friend Zach had recommended me this movie and said that it was one of the best anthology horror films that he had seen. And it had work from John Landis, it had work from Steven fucking Spielberg, it had Dan Aykroyd in it, it had my boy from The Shining. Oh God, how am I forgetting his name? He's amazing. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. Scatman Carruthers. Yeah, it had him in it. I mean, it was just like, man, this film has got to be special. And we watched it together, and my thoughts on it. I'm going to break it down and want to talk about, since it is an anthology film, it's made up of 4 stories. And it has a little wraparound story at the end that ties in from the beginning to the end. And I believe 2 of the stories are remakes. And then 2 of the other stories were loosely based off of episodes, but they all have ties to various Twilight Zone episodes. And unfortunately, I don't think I've seen any of the Twilight episodes that were paid homage to in the movie, which is unfortunate, I suppose, but I don't think it had too much of a bearing on my thoughts of the movie. Perhaps it would, but whatever. But yeah, so the opening skit is kind of interesting, I guess. It's just like 2 dudes in a car, whatever, and like the twist or whatever. It's kind of cool because at the end, it literally, like, the first skit has absolutely nothing to do that I can think of with any of the other stories, or the first story that it leads into. But the ending, like, epilogue, if you will, or the sequel to the prologue, is like a really nice cap to the movie. But no, so the first official story is actually, I think it's one of the better ones. So, because it's got some pretty absurd 20th century racism and discrimination that we have since kind of weeded out in pop culture, which is definitely a good thing. We've become much more progressive. But I really like the setup, how, this guy, his life is, he's ranting about these guys who have messed up his life, these people who have messed up his life and, you know, got him a promotion or got a promotion over him at work, whatever. It's an African-American guy, a Jewish guy, and a fucking Asian person. And then he's thrust into the perspectives of these individuals going through, you know, their oppressed fates, I suppose. Because, you know, you got a Jewish person in Nazi Germany, you've got a black person in a KKK bonfire, and then you've got an Asian person who is being, you know, victimized in Vietnam by American soldiers. And I think it's really good. I think it's, you know, it's got a lot of cool action sequences. The big thing with this anthology story is it was directed by John Landis, controversially, because it involved the infamous plane crash that killed not only the main character, the actor who played the main character in the story, but it also killed two Vietnamese child actors. I believe they're Vietnamese. And it was, you know, a horrible tragedy, but what makes the story even crazier, right? They were killed in a helicopter crash in a scene, shooting for a scene that was since deleted, obviously. But the craziest thing about that is actually you can find footage, and I've seen the footage, but they have clear footage of the crash from multiple different angles that you can watch on YouTube. It's crazy. It's pretty disturbing. It doesn't bother me that much, but it is really, really crazy, and it's intense, and it's just wow. But I did, all in all, you know, it's the fact that the production of this movie was not immediately scrapped and or highly postponed, and the fact that they still kept this story in with the actor who unfortunately passed away, and perhaps, you know, that was supposed to be some sort of tribute. I'm kind of surprised that this movie wasn't canned from there, but it was, that's intense. I mean, it's crazy to me. I mean, it's one of the most bizarre, and, you know, I don't know what else to say. I feel like I've said crazy a bunch already, but I mean, it's wow. Second story, however, I'm not a huge fan of. It does have my boy Scatman Crothers, but it's like, basically, you know, you've got all these old people in this old folks home, and it kind of reminds me of The Shining a little bit, because my boy Scatman Crothers is like, he's like little Danny from The Shining. He's got The Shining, right? He's got that ability to like see the past, just like Scatman Crothers in this short has the ability to, you know, pull people back into their old selves that they want to live through, right? So it's about this, you know, my boy Scatman pulling up to a retirement home, and like whenever they play kick the can, they're able to, you know, transform back into their state in which they enjoyed life the most. And like, you know, they're all old and they all wish they were kids again, and so it's kind of cool. It's kind of a nice little feel-good story. It doesn't necessarily fit, in my opinion, with the vibe of the movie, because it's very different from the other stories, but it's lighthearted. It's kind of nice. I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it that much. The third story, however, this one is definitely the craziest, for sure, because there are some really funny moments. The funniest moment, I think, in the whole movie, this girl fucking runs over this little boy on his fucking bike. That shit just made me laugh out loud, straight up. And also, like, earlier, when this, like, kid's in a diner, right? This poor kid just rode his bike to this diner by himself, you know? And this fucking, like, grown-ass man fucking pushes this, like, I don't know, he's probably 8, like 9, maybe 10, fucking pushes him to the ground because he's being loud. And, like, he, like, broke the TV or some shit. Like, what the fuck? But, no, each story, it seems, has some sort of famous actor, because in this one, the voice of Lisa Simpson, I forget her name, but she plays the sister of this super fucking weird backwards family that this kid is living in. But it actually goes down. This episode, if there's one that I would maybe have to rewatch to get a greater understanding and appreciation for, as I've talked about with a bunch of the movies that I've seen, this is probably the one, because it gets nuts. And I mean, there are some pretty cool effects, some really cool effects in this story. I don't think it's my favorite. I like it more than the second story, but it gets kind of weird, a little too weird for my taste, a little too extreme. But I mean, it's out there. A friend of mine really enjoyed, the friend that recommended me this movie really enjoyed it, and I can see why. It's very sci-fi, it's very, creepy and pretty dark, with like the giant bunny and stuff, and like the kid who you think is like this innocent little guy, and like the family's crazy, turns out he's the one who is, causing a muck and causing all of this fucking mayhem. The third story is fucking mayhem, all right? But the fourth story is my favorite by far. I remember he was like, after we got done watching the movie, he was like, yeah, the fourth story is like perfect, and it's really good. I think the fourth story is by far the best one, and it recreates probably the most prolific and well-known Twilight Zone episode, the classic, the super nervous guy who is flying for the first time and has got all kinds of worries that the plane's going to crash, and he sees a creature on the wing and nobody believes him, and he starts going crazy, and you kind of go back and forth in perspectives of the guy and also the people on the plane, whether they're passengers or the stewards, and you're like, what the fuck is happening? This, that, and the third. And my boy, Arthur Mitchell, John Lithgow, Lord Farquaad, is fantastic. He utters some classic lines. He gives an amazing performance. I mean, it really is. This is about as perfect of a anthology story you can get, frankly. The effects of the creature that is on the wing are pretty fucking crazy. In the original story, they're really bad, but it is, the 60s. But yeah, I mean, it is just as cool, just as entertaining, just as, effective, really, as the original Twilight Zone episode, which I have seen. And, it also, to cap it off, it has the cool wraparound like the first story started off with, or the epilogue, right? There is an epilogue to the prologue, when he's in the ambulance, and my boy Dan Aykroyd, another star-studded, and big actors in this fucking movie, bro. Big actors in this fucking movie. This movie, like Steven Spielberg, John Landis, fucking Dan Aykroyd, John Lithgow, like shit was fucking crazy. Scatman Crothers, like big names. This is nothing like Alice, Sweet Alice. Nothing like some of the more obscure freaking talent that dreads on. I know, absolutely not. Like this film, it's something else, man. This film is crazy. It really is. From the tragedy of the first story to the total array of varying genres of each story, and I think that can be a good thing, but also can be a bad thing, because it's a little hodgepodgey. It's labeled as a horror film, and I definitely think it has more horror elements, but like the first story is like a action film type beat. Second story is like a feel good coming of age. I don't know. Third story is like sci-fi, sci-fi horror, I guess. And then the fourth one is just like straight up suspense thriller. And I suppose, at least 3 of the 4 stories have some like intense, violent, kind of dark overtones, I suppose. But all in all, I mean, I feel like when you're kind of analyzing and looking at an anthology film, you kind of piece together you rate each story individually. And I know a lot of anthology films have kind of like an overarching theme, or some of them do. Personally, I've not seen Creepshow. It's on my big horror movie list, but I'll be watching that hopefully pretty soon. I have seen Creepshow 2, and I think Creepshow 2 is fantastic, so I have high expectations for Creepshow. But no, I mean, like I said, I think the first story gets like a 3.5 out of 5. The second story gets like a 2 out of 5. The third story, gets like a 3 out of 5. And then the fourth story, God, I can't count, gets a 5 out of 5, absolutely. All in all, though, I did, in totality, I did enjoy this movie a lot. I would rewatch it. You know, the only thing that really bogs it down, everything is good except for, personally, that second story. But it's not bad. It just doesn't really fit the mood, you know, of the film, of the rest of the stories. But I would recommend this movie to horror fans. I think I would recommend it to movie fans. I don't know about just people in general, like friends and stuff, because it might come off as a little campy, a little cheesy. But I feel like you could take it serious. Yeah. So I think I recommended it to my roommate. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3.5. No, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I would say it is a damn good film. It's a horror film, I suppose, but not, I don't know. It's a horror film, I guess. It's a horror film, yeah. I give it 4 out of 5. That last story with John Lithgow, it's amazing. It's really good. And the movie is